All right, I think we're back. I think we're live. I'm gonna check my phone. I always gotta look down because there's no way to confirm. And just so you know, Jace, the little counter in the corner there, it's not right. So there's gonna be a lot more people online. So if you're just tuning in, again, this is Mike. We got Alex. We got a special guest, Jace, in the building today. Very famous in the ServiceNow ecosystem. Super glad to have him, and just hear from one of the greats. If you got any questions for Jace, make sure you throw them in the comments below. I'm gonna sort of step back and just kind of interject if I feel like I can add anything. But Alex, why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Martinez from Creating Coding Careers, where we develop aspiring developers to transition into ServiceNow and web development roles. Today's guest has been working in the ServiceNow space for quite some time, over 15 years. He is a 2022 ServiceNow Developer MVP. Please welcome Jace Benson. Welcome, Jace.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So one of the first things I like to do with our guests is kind of ask you to kind of just walk us through your journey. How do you first got started into ServiceNow? Can you remember way back when you started? Because I know you've been doing this for a while. Like, how did you get first introduced to ServiceNow? And can you kind of give us a short little story? Like, how did you get to where you are now working for Delta Airlines?
So a long time ago, I used to work at a hospital. I was a patient escort. I was pushing people around, and I saw people that had better jobs than I did, who made more than I did, working less than I did. I got a job with them, and then I realized that nobody here knows how to fix anything. And they said, yeah, there's a help desk. And so I applied for that job, and I got it. I was really ecstatic because it was my first IT job. They were using a system called Touch Paper, super old. It would crash every 20 to 30 minutes and take 5 minutes to open up. No joke, local run on the machine. It was a terrible experience. They moved to ServiceNow for change management. And this was 2007 or late 2006. And I was tasked to set up the service catalog for it. And that's kind of how it started. So then I was a help desk, 0.75, and working on ServiceNow 0.25. And eventually I got headhunted by a partner company after presenting or speaking at a ServiceNow user group, because those were the only thing that existed back then. And the rest is kind of history.
And so you moved from company to company, and each transition was with the help of a recruiter. Is that about right? Just kind of headhunting you, saying, "Hey, this is other opportunity," and you would stray away to a different company afterwards.
No, I've only used a recruiter recently. Actually, the current job, I had a recruiter reach out to me. Other than that, I've always direct applied.
And we talked about how you got noticed, and I know you don't quite know exactly what made you get noticed this last time around, but what do you think is your secret sauce? Obviously, you're a major contributor to the community. I know you have a YouTube channel, you have a blog. I know you're coming out with some great apps. We're going to talk about Stu in a little bit. Is that pretty much, do you think that's what's allowing you to stand above the crowd and get recruited to these new positions?
I mean, I think back in the day, if you'd ask this question, I would just tell you that it's luck. And I still think it's kind of luck. But luck is interesting because you can make luck. It's like a lottery ticket, right? If you buy more, you'll have more chances of winning. So if you do more things to be seen in other places, you're really increasing the odds that you'll be noticed, right?
Yep, absolutely.
That's one way to make luck. There's a great post by a guy named, I don't know his actual name, but SWYX, about creating luck. And I don't know. He really spells it out in a great way there to be like, well, it's not luck if you're doing the things. It is still, but if you're taking every chance you can to increase that odd, you're going to do much better.
Yep. Luck is preparedness, meeting opportunity, right? Absolutely right. And I know you've been working with customers of ServiceNow versus maybe the partners of ServiceNow. Would you be able to give us a perspective? What would you say or do you know, what's the difference like from the developer's point of view for working for a customer versus working for, let's say, an elite partner?
It's going to be a difference in role, right? So if you're working for a customer, you're going to have a few set, these are our objectives for the quarter or the year, right? It's going to be very, very deep on a single topic, right? So like when we first got started in ServiceNow, way back when, like I was in charge of setting up Service Catalog, like the whole application, which is a lot to do for like one person who's never done that stuff. But like when you work for a partner, you might be working with 3 clients in a week. You're spread differently. You're going to have a lot more visibility to a lot more things to see what you like. In my opinion, I would never give away that time I worked at a partner. I think that partner work was fantastic because that let me see what parts of the platform I really enjoy working on and what parts of the platform I don't. Had I not worked with that partner, there's 20 customers I never would work with. There's probably 50 integrations and other things I never would have done that I never would have been asked to do. And I would have never felt like that pain to try it.
Wait, you just said something that there's parts of the platform that you don't like.
Oh, there's loads.
Let's just touch that surface. Like, what do you find maybe challenging on the platform? Is like maybe not your cup of tea, and vice versa. Like, what do you find like super fun on the platform? Like, what's your favorites? Like, either capability or like place to sort of work in.
Sure. So the things on the platform that I avoid generally, I generally avoid brand new things because those things are constantly changing. Not that they're bad, but they're constantly changing. But then when you get the opportunity to work with some of those new things and you find out that they're just not great, like if you've worked with any of the new ServiceNow Next Experience custom component development, it is like a sheer cliff wall. Like I would love to get into it, but it's nothing like, I shouldn't say it's nothing like, it's so different from React. It's difficult for me to grasp the concepts. And so every time I've approached that barrier and walked away from it, I've quickly just forgotten what I've learned. Right? And then you got other things that are like more stable, like discovery is a huge thing that if you're an expert in discovery, like you will be sought after. But you have to be willing to work with the networking folks to make sure that the paths are accessible, like the network paths are accessible, the security folks to make sure your devices have the right authentication stuff. And you have to be willing to troubleshoot all those things and kind of understand like Windows port troubleshooting and Linux port, like that kind of stuff. And if that's not your bread and butter, I wouldn't recommend that for anybody.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense.
But things that I love working on, I started on Service Catalog, and guess what? I still really like working on Service Catalog because I think it gives people the most bang for their buck on like how they can just quickly see value. Making forms to meet items, having processes automated. Like I think that's the bread and butter of ServiceNow.
Yeah. I'm just a layperson in ServiceNow, and that's kind of where that's my go-to, right? Is like, okay, Service Catalog. We know a lot of portal folks too, so I think portals are sort of high up on people's list too. But those two are like that's a staple.
Well, portal's changing, right? They're now shifting from Service Portal to this Next Experience. Like we're in that timeline. We'll see how it goes.
Speaking of things that interest you, Jace, is there any pathway that excites you that you're interested about, or what would be the hot topic right now? I know a lot of people have been talking about security, SecOps, GRC. Other people are talking about HR. Do either of those attract you, or do you find another pathway more interesting?
I mean, I personally like the fundamentals of ServiceNow the most because if you understand the fundamentals, you can probably get to the understanding of all the other things. That being said, I've been humbled. I've been working with HR a lot more recently. And I realized that I don't know anything about that space. And it is definitely not something you can just walk into. So, what was the question again?
Just which one might interest you? Yeah, any pathway you might see in your future. Like, I'm going to check out SecOps or security. Or do you...
I've been diving deep into the AI stuff recently, like outside of ServiceNow, but also recently in ServiceNow because of like a bug that came up with order guides in Tokyo and how they don't link to the right places. And I'm realizing that I may have walked away from artificial intelligence, machine learning in ServiceNow a couple of years ago because of some like weird requirements that they had where you had to have like 10,000 rows to train it to categorize stuff, which is like a ridiculous number of things. But But I may dive deeper into that just to see what the capabilities are.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Like Chat GPT kind of changed my mind a little bit on like AI and ML. Like before, it was just like very conceptual. It was like super nerdy. Sorry, but like it was just like you got to.
You're absolutely right.
Deep math stuff, and I'm just like neural networks and like how do I set up all this stuff? But then as soon as I saw like the power of Chat GPT, I'm like, oh man, I gotta play catch up because this is insane.
I mean, but really, it's not that different than what they had a few months ago. It's just they put it together in a way that keeps the context of the conversation and answers you with confidence and likely answers, likely positive results.
So speaking of AI, I know you have a new baby, Stu, the Scribe Monster that you created. Can you tell us a little bit more about Scribe Monster and what you did with it?
So speaking about ChatGPT, right? I found out about it back in November. At the end of November, I saw it and I was like, oh, what is this? And when I find something like that that's crazy, I try to see what the company's about and what they have. And then I saw that they had APIs. And I was like, well, the best way for me to learn something is to build something. That's why I'm always making stuff, right? I made a blog. I have that news site that aggregates stuff. That news site was a result of me trying to learn GraphQL because ServiceNow uses GraphQL in some parts of it. And that's a whole nother beast. But Scribe Monster is me learning the artificial intelligence side of it. And so Scribe Monster, if anybody's in the chat doesn't know what it is, it's an extension that you can install in your browser that you can have it explain your code, write code, and edit code for you. Now, it's not going to be right all the time. Matter of fact, it'll probably be wrong more than it's right. But it might give you somewhere to start where you had nothing to start with, which can be a big jump in a direction that you didn't have before.
So aside from this new integration you just created, you provided us this link back when we were talking to Justin Meadows in our a couple of weeks ago. This great resource. It's your site, jace.pro/resources, and you give us all these links to all these great resources that we were just talking about just a while ago. And we're talking about how for up-and-comers, people breaking out into the ServiceNow space, starting to, get involved with the community is the best way to do it. And one of the best ways to do that is to getting on the ServiceNow Discord. And I believe it's Mr. Woodruff who's running that as the administrator. And would you recommend people who are just breaking into the space to start joining the Discord channel, the Slack channel, and, start hitting up these meetups, these snugs? What do you think people should start doing to start rising above the crowd and getting noticed?
I mean, for me, I just create stuff. Like I try to be social with what I'm doing. I try to build the stuff that I can in public. But I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have a place to ask the questions. Like if you search the old community, right, for posts that I made, like you'll find one about like, why doesn't the sticky notes on home pages not save the return character? And Mark Stanger answered my question way back then. Right. And I remember that, like, this is 15 years ago, but like, you need a place to ask questions. And the community is like email. It's asynchronous. It's, it's not whatever. It's you send the thing, you walk away, you come back a couple hours later, a day later, and you might have an answer. But these new places, Discord and Slack, they're real time. Like if you have a question, you can ask it there. But please don't come there and ask people to do the work for you. Like, try to be thoughtful about your question. Like, I've tried these things. I'm getting this problem. I don't understand it. Help me.
Yep. And there's gurus all up in there. I know you're on there, Jace. Robert Federick's on there. Mr. Woodruff is on there. And they're actually communicating real time every day. I mean, people come in there. They're they're beginners in the ServiceNow space. They come with their questions and they get answered immediately. So if you want to interact with some really smart people in the ServiceNow space, join that Discord community. I have not joined the Slack one. I just see it now. So I'm probably going to join that one soon as well.
The Slack one is a lot bigger and a lot noisier.
Oh, okay.
But just, pick your poison, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have other resources. So I noticed you have links to Angular and Bootstrap, and I have a feeling I know why. Can you tell us why specifically Angular 1.5.6 and Bootstrap 3.3? I believe ServiceNow only works with those two versions. Is that why you're choosing those two links?
That is. I thought the link was to Angular 153, not 156, but regardless, it's that like around that version number that ServiceNow runs their Angular stuff on. And so if you're trying to use stuff in the newer versions of Angular, or now they're old, but the newer versions from what they had, like you might have a problem, which is why the specific versions are important. Same with Bootstrap. And that's for the service portal work.
Of course, you got that link over to the developer. I'm assuming that's going to take you to the instance, and that's a place where you go down there, start playing with your own developer instance, and start building things based on all the resources they have there. So aside from all these great resources that you provided, and there's the link right there, it's jace.pro/resources. For any up-and-comers breaking into the ServiceNow space, any advice you'd like to give them?
Find some problem that excites you and build a solution for it. You don't need a project from a website or a mentor. You can just be like, look, I got a new dog. I need to track when it goes to the bathroom because it's sick. Make a small app to like track when you go to the bathroom or whatever. You know, I know that Earl Duquet kind of followed this method with, he made like a Yelp on ServiceNow that was sort of semi-public. So you put in like a certain phrase and it was tied to your stuff and you could whatever. I think building stuff is such a better way to become comfortable with the technology than testing out on certifications.
Got a question from the crowd, Jace, if that's okay. So, they're on one. Let's see. This is going to come from Solomon. He is one of our pre-apprentices. Thank you for joining us, Jace. Do you use this Stu the Scribe monster in your day-to-day workflow? If so, has it made your job easier?
So I still haven't started using it in my day-to-day workflow, but I do use it to like ask questions too, because it's just an easier interface to get access to the OpenAI APIs. So like there's the content pop-up that comes up on the screen for like the business rules and client scripts. But then also on the top right, if you pin Stu in the corner there, you can just click on them. And there's an Ask Me Anything, and there's a process maker and a summarizer tab. And it'll do those functions for you, which I found really useful. So I'm Solomon, I'm still learning this AI stuff, and I hope it adds value to some people. I know some people are using it all the time. Like the explain script function gets a ton of use. But it's really neat to see it work and like to see how it can be used with these tools.
So when I was on with Justin Meadows again a couple of weeks ago, you asked him this question, and I'd love to hear your answer to your same question. If you are a hiring manager, what would wow you? What would it take for someone that's brand new to? What would they have to do to really wow you for you to say, "Yeah, I want to hire this guy here"?
I mean, if they have experience in the problems that we're if they have experience or they've done things with the problems that we're experiencing, like that's gonna like be number one. But that's highly unlikely, right? Because people are new, they're not gonna know everything. They're not gonna have tried the thing just because it can. Outside of that, like if you showed like I built this thing that solves this amazing problem as part of this stuff, like I think that is just showing the value of the stuff that you do and be able to articulate how that saves time or money or avoids risk. Like that's really going to be the bread and butter of making anybody's like eyes go wide and be happy with somebody's like option, right?
Yep, exactly. And so a great example of that, you and I just spoke to a little earlier before we started, we're talking about the next gen program. So ServiceNow has this great next gen program, and right now they're building portals. Not only are they building these portals, they're showcasing them on LinkedIn. So shout out to everybody who's in the next gen program and who put out these beautiful portals, created videos, showcasing them, talking to us about how they built them, what they do. I think that's what you're talking about, right? That's the secret sauce, Jay. Someone who's out there kind of like promoting themselves. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you're showing that stuff off, not only did you have to learn how to make that site or make that solution, now you're also understanding and getting better at speaking about it and pitching it. Like, hey, this thing I made is going to solve these problems for these reasons, right?
Yep, exactly.
And like that isn't a skill that everybody has. When I started, like I was terrible at speaking. I remember once in a meeting at a customer client, I was standing next to a coworker and he said, "Hi, my name is, Bob Johnson." And then it got to me. I'm like, "Hi, my name is Bob Johnson." Everybody looked at me weird because I copied them. And it wasn't intentional, but like people get nervous, right?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, you got to put the practice in. Mike, you got any more questions for our speaker, Jace?
I'll definitely second on that. Like giving people a chance to be the expert in the room. Also, like even if it's just an expert at the project that you just built, really does help you to sort of like get comfortable putting yourself out there and getting feedback from people. I'm curious if you remember maybe the first thing that you built of any significance, and what was that like? What was that experience?
The first thing I was proud of making never got finished because I left that employer. But before Flow Designer, there was workflow, and we were doing onboarding at that hospital I worked at way back when. And we had this really complex, like there was like hundreds of roles. People would get different applications. And you got to remember, this is 2007. Like what's out there today is way different than what's out there now. But I had worked on making a system where like you could just pick, this is a labor and delivery nurse. This is a med surg nurse. This is a whatever doctor. And it would have all of their appropriate access that they would need, and it would make those things happen, which is different than like an order guide, because an order guide is like very specific to like those items, because they don't want to pick all that stuff. Like you had to like manage that somewhere, like a profile pretty much of like med surg nurses get Epic and they get payroll and they get these other whatever things with specific rates within them. But that was probably the first thing I was really proud of making. I spent a lot of time on that. And I was sad to have to walk away from it, but different opportunities came and you got to roll with the punches.
And it sounds like for those people that are kind of like trying to grasp, that you kind of going a little deep there, but it sounds like, for people that are in like desktop support or they're in like configuration inside organizations, like a lot of the grind of those kinds of positions is like you're doing a lot of the same things over and over again. And so that to me is the signal of like a true software engineer is like, I want to do this twice. And once I understand how to do it, I am writing a code to make me never have to do this again.
Yeah. I mean, there's things that non-admins can do to like automate their stuff today in ServiceNow.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can ask your admins if you can have the ability to schedule templates. And guess what? Now you have a recurring scheduled task that gets made for whatever purpose.
Yeah. What's your favorite tool right now? Like if you had to pick one sweet spot where you're just like kind of excited, what would that be?
I mean, when you say favorite tool, like what do you mean? Like
just,
within the service as space, or like
somewhere within the ecosystem?
I don't know. There's a lot of tools in ServiceNow. I don't know that I would call any of them my favorite. I like the old things because they work. Like they're the fundamentals. Like if you took ServiceNow and like made it a tower, the base blocks would be business rules, events, right? There wouldn't be much above that. There wouldn't be much below those things. Processor, like you can't do processes anymore. But today it'd be like business rules, events, service portal. Like those would be the base blocks. And like I think those things are just so critical. If you know how to work with those things, you can probably solve any problem in ServiceNow.
Nice. One question I know a lot of new people will say, and this is because they don't really get a good sense of what the platform is if they haven't really been, like they haven't used it as a consumer, as a user of the platform. And, especially when we're bringing people in that think about, I want to be like, they think it's about just like writing lines of code. And so they will almost always say something along the lines of, well, I thought ServiceNow is like a low code, no code. So am I going to get to code? I hear that all the time. So what's your take on that? Like, are they going to get a chance to code on the platform?
I mean, the low code, no code stuff gets you so far, but eventually you'll have to debug it and understand how it works. So even if you're not writing the code, you still have to understand maybe how did this flow designer pick that record to send something to or make an update on. There's still opportunities to script in those places though, if it's needed. But I would highly recommend to not script when you don't have to. Like you guys had said earlier, Jace has a new baby. His name is Stu. You're not kidding. Whenever you write code, that code lives forever. I was reached out to about code I wrote like 8 years ago because I'd left a comment in there saying, hey, there's a problem with this. Fix it later, Jace. And like, that's fine. But just realize that your code doesn't just stop working. It lives indefinitely until it's changed.
Yeah. And that's just, as a engineer, I think it's more mature. You start to realize that, like, although it's cool to write code, if I can delete code and do something with UI and snapping two Lego blocks together and making it work, then like it's all about like, giving the right solution for the problem. And to your point, like the less we can like have something hand coded that someone's going to have to maintain. And it's usually me because I wrote it. So I got to maintain it. So it's you or something you got to maintain. This is kind of hard because I think a lot of early career folks just don't have that like level of experience to realize why. I'm a lazy coder for a reason, because it's
when I started, I wrote code all the time and I thought it was the bee's knees. I was like, oh yeah, I can solve that problem. Let me just tappity tap tap and get it done.
Yeah, for sure. No, those are all great. Any shout outs? Anybody in the ecosystem that you think is just like killing it that we should be talking to?
Oh my gosh, there are people. So, like you said earlier, there's Justin Meadows, who you guys covered. There's Callie, who is in the chat.
Yep.
Phil Swan, he's in the chat too. He's all about security and privacy. I don't know if you guys are on top of that stuff.
I've reached out to Phil. I definitely want to get him back. I want to get him onto the podcast.
Yeah,
Phil, let's do it.
Yeah, Mark Scott. I don't know if he's been on here before, but Mark Scott. Now he works at ServiceNow. He's fantastic. There's so many good resources now within the ServiceNow space.
And we're talking about Chuck Tomasi, right? Maybe that's another one we should definitely.
Yeah, Chuck Tomasi. He's almost always a call out, especially with his JavaScript series on YouTube, going over ECMA 5 stuff, which is more relevant to ServiceNow developers. Even though they're releasing newer versions of ServiceNow, there's newer versions of JavaScript in ServiceNow. It's not consistent across the platform. So unless you want to learn those nuances, I would just stick with ECMA 5.
Just pro tip right there, folks. Lock it in. Stay on that ECMA script 5. That's basically everything before ES6, right? So like old stuff.
No spread operators, no arrow operators.
No
destructuring. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Those things are all great. I love those things. In my other side projects, I use things all the time. But you got to know where you can use them. Yeah,
for sure. Awesome. Well, that's all I got. I got to drop. If you've got some time to hang here, I know you might not have but I'm gonna say goodbye at this point, and appreciate you sharing your time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate the stuff you guys are doing, and I think this content out here I think it helps. But I don't know. I guess that'd be up to your audience.
Oh yeah.
What do you guys think in the chat? Let us know.
Much appreciated. So I'm going to put up your LinkedIn profile. If you have not linked up with this gentleman, please do so. This is a guru in the space. You definitely want to check out his YouTube video. You want to check out his, I think you have a blog, and you have another resource that kind of like compiles all the news in ServiceNow into one space. I forget the name of that resource.
It's just news.jace.pro.
News.jace.pro. Definitely want to go check that out. Thank you so much again, Jace, for joining us. I do want to leave us with one quote, and this is a quote that I took from your conversation with Chuck Tomasi on Breakpoint.
Oh,
this is what last I think piece of advice that you gave everybody when he asked you, what would you tell a new and upcomer coming into the ServiceNow space? He said, just make stuff, just keep creating. So I'm going to leave us with that. Thanks again. I appreciate you joining us, and hope to see you in the future. Everybody have a great weekend. Jace, thanks again. Good night, everybody. See you.